Welcome to All Things Chiropractic.
Welcome to another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
And I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Welcome all.
Well, I think everyone's going to like this topic because, well, it's about patience, and you have a great title for this one.
Just titled it Great Expectations.
I like
And
it.
it's not Charles Dickens' book.
Yeah. The tagline is Guidelines for Being an Excellent Patient. So now the doctor's interests are all piqued because they're like, hey,
Ooh, talk about
this is
flipping
about
the
the
script,
patient.
huh? It's not
Yes.
about being the best doctor. It's
yeah. We're not going to beat you up today. We're going to beat up your patient. No, I'm just.
So it's like being an excellent patient. Isn't that a concept?
So, it makes me think that there's not a universal answer as to what makes an excellent patient, right? It's really dependent on the doctor and the practice, isn't it?
What's your goals? But here's the ruling principle for everybody, or at least my ruling principle for everybody, is chiropractic is for everyone. I am not.
Boy, is
You
that true.
don't have to. So I was trying to talk fast enough to cut 'em
Wow.
out. Yeah. Yeah.
Got a lot of
But I mean-
nodding heads out there, I bet.
Bada bing, bada boom, But the truth is, you don't have to be everything to everybody. You have certain skills, you have certain knowledge, you have certain expertise in different areas, the things you like and things you don't like. There are patients you enjoy and other types of patients you don't enjoy. You need to recognize and accept right up front that chiropractic is for everyone, but you don't have to be.
There you go. So, but putting this into practice, or at least starting to, I would think that I'd visualize what is my excellent patient? What does that mean? Like, what are the parameters? Not just what conditions make them an excellent patient, but what attitude, what willingness to pay for my service, what coverage they might have,
Yeah.
how they interact with
Whatever.
my
There's
staff.
no wrong there.
Yeah.
Everything you say. But what you have to accept up front is that I think most doctors live by the principle that the patient has to accept them as their doctor. In one way or another, behavior is guided by that. We do everything to accommodate the patient. We try and create a schedule that accommodates the patient. We try and do things and that's all necessary and important. But once the patient accepts you, they have to also understand that you have to accept them as a patient. When you create this perfect exchange between the two of you, when all of a sudden they might think, well, I want that doctor. Does that doctor want me? Because medicine does a great job of that, right? I mean, they do a great job of not necessarily saying, just because you came into the hospital doesn't mean you're going to get Dr. So and so. Everybody has their ideal situation, and you can't live by ideals. But when it comes to goal setting, which, Paul, you talk a lot about, how do you know what you're going to end up with if you haven't defined it?
I think some of the trouble that doctors might have, and this actually would be a good exercise for the chiropractic assistants too, the front desk and the clinical, whoever. But I think some of the challenges that I would foresee that someone might have is that one, depending on where you are in your practice, meaning how long you've been in practice, you might say, or one might say, well, an excellent patient is one who comes in and pays. And leave it at that.
That could be your criteria. As you get along in practice, that list grows. If you look on your schedule and as you go down the list and you come across that one patient and you just sink, you have to ask yourself, what is it about this patient that I am not looking forward to? What is it about this patient that makes me not want to be in that room with them? Because whatever that characteristic is something you don't want to perpetuate. So by defining your excellent patient, eventually in time, you will create a practice of people you want and people who want you. But when you have a practice that just you'll take anybody and everybody because they're a warm body and they can pay, burnout happens very, very quickly, very quickly.
Well, if someone's having a hard time starting this process, maybe start with the reverse, as you said. Think about that patient that you're just like, ugh, like that patient that
Oh,
drives you nuts, or that patient they come in and they're like a bad penny, and you can't get rid of them. And analyze what it is about them. It could just be energetically. It doesn't have to be maybe
that's
something
it.
tangible either. But work backwards from there. I think I think it could be fun actually as you concept. I talk about with goals, concepting your excellent patient, who that is, what that is. That it's just like the patients. If you've been around long enough, your CA says, "Oh, I haven't seen so and so in a while," and guess who pops up on the schedule, right? You're just like,
Mhm.
there's that connection universally that happens. That boom, they're there. So why couldn't that happen with the model patient that you're looking for? Why not?
Right. When somebody comes into your office, obviously you do everything you can to get them to the place they wanna be and you want them to be, of course, clinically, but you also hope and expect that if they're satisfied with your services, they will refer others. Well, if this is the patient that you go down your schedule and look at and go, more than likely the next patient they send into your office will be another person. You go down the list and go, so start thinking along the lines of building a patient list of people you want to see. A lot of times people, when you talk here, especially here in Massachusetts, somebody will say, "Oh, I want to open up a practice in Massachusetts. I want to go to Cape Cod." It's like, great. Do you like practicing senior practice? Well, not really. So, well, then don't go to Cape Cod or recognize you're eliminating a very large portion of the population. We're like Florida of the North here at Cape Cod.
Yeah.
So you've already maybe unconsciously have defined what you like and don't like. You don't want a whole practice full of seniors, or maybe you do. That's what I mean. It's there. You just need to spend the energy to sit down and define it. Zig Ziglar said, what? Expect the best, prepare for the worst, and capitalize on what comes. Right? Isn't that really what business is all about right there?
Well, concepting what comes, like,
Mhm.
and if you really like a challenge, I'm saying to myself, boy, if you really like a challenge, doc, why don't you try to describe your excellent patient as one that's just tough coming in the door, skeptical, grumpy, but you turn them around and they become like your best referrer because you're so charming and your skills are so good and your staff
Thank
is
you. Thank
just
you.
on the number that
Thank
they
you.
just wouldn't that be the best and most excellent patient, right?
Even break it down into some of the fundamentals, right? They follow your recommendations. They pay. They refer others. They come in with a good attitude. They lift you up. They don't drag you down. They're inquisitive about chiropractic. I mean, you could come up with your own list. I literally on my re-exam, first re-exam in my patient care, handed them a sheet that said, "How to be a good patient." I gave them my expectations. By that point in
How
time, I was
arrogant of you,
hopefully
doctor. My gosh.
yeah, yeah,
Who do you think you are?
that's it.
God's
But by
gift to
that point in
chiropractic
time,
over here, huh?
I expect you to be a good patient because if you had a patient that you give them a 10 o'clock appointment time, for example, and they're continuously showing up at 2, at 1 in the morning, 9 o'clock, and they just wander in, and you keep taking that patient, and you accommodate that behavior. When they refer someone in, they're gonna go, "Hey, don't worry about the appointment. Just go whenever you can get there. They'll take you." Right? Now, maybe that's your protocol is you have an open
Yeah.
schedule kind of a thing, but I'm just using it as an example that whatever you allow will be what you get. It's that simple. whatever you allow will be what you get. So why not at least spend the effort to define what it is you want so that ends up being what you get? More and more and more of it.
Well, it's funny because I think of it for myself, right? So I remember post the pandemic helping out a friend of mine who owns a salon. She couldn't find a massage therapist to save her life. And she was trying to get back into the business, right? Trying to get things back going. She had these monthly people. So I started working there. And in my mind, I'm like, "Ugh, this is going to be salon, spa, fluff and buff, boring massages that I'm going to have to give. And that's not really who I would like on my table. But wouldn't you know, doing that either consciously or unconsciously, I started developing a practice in my very part-time coverage up there. And I was fully booked with the people that were looking for care for health more than just now relaxation has a lot of benefits. So I'm not poo-pooing that, but I wanted someone that, on my table that I could help them with their troubles, so to speak, their musculoskeletal issues. And
Well,
I
and
ended up
and
with a
they
book
they're
like
gonna
that.
refer others like it,
And I never thought
right?
I didn't originally think that that was gonna happen, but as I dug into, building it back up with her for her, like, okay, that was pretty cool. And in a salon setting, in a spa setting, which you wouldn't necessarily expect to see that. So don't get I guess my point is don't get trapped, doctors and staff, into, well, we do wanna do, kids and youth and sports injury, but we do live in an area with a high concentration of geriatrics and seniors. It doesn't mean you can't. It just means it might be some more challenging, but they all have grandkids and grandnephews and,
Yeah.
in your
So
case, Mark,
define
great,
it.
great, great
Yeah,
grandnephews and
yeah. You could be on Cape
yeah,
Cod
yeah,
and great, 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 great,
yeah.
but you could be on Cape Cod and have the practice you want, but it won't happen if you don't define it. We did a podcast. Please look back and listen to Dr. Heidi Havoc, who's the PhD neurophysiology researcher who's a chiropractor, right, from New Zealand. Brilliant, brilliant woman. And aside from many, many things that she said, which I find fascinating, she talked about how they've actually been able to prove that when you're with a patient, the vibratory energy between the two of you becomes in sync. So if you have a patient that you love to be with, they're going to feel that. If you have a patient you don't love to be with, they're going to feel that. So, just from a pure business perspective, I would rather promote people who I like because they're gonna like me back and send me more patients like that, as opposed to promoting those people who get the sense that I don't like them or wanna treat them and leave me and walk away and go, "No, don't go there, he doesn't care." This is real business here. This is the heart of building a practice, is to connect with your patients, and to connect with them, you have to be able to define who they are in your mind.
I think that also helps with rejection. If you're someone who has a hard time with rejection, but you start to build a concept of what is an excellent patient, and that person rejects you as a doctor, and it could be as simple as they just never come back and you don't know why, maybe you'll start to get a understanding that it isn't because of you personally, it's just it wasn't the flavor for that patient, and maybe they weren't the flavor for you,
Yeah,
right?
we all have preferences, right? We all have and if you don't think you have if you really are one of those people that said, "Oh, I'm open to help everybody." I don't believe it.
Well, you might feel that way, but
Right,
when it comes
but
down to what you enjoy, that's
yeah,
a different story. You can be
right.
open to helping everybody.
Oh, I'm
I am open to massaging anybody and everybody, but if I had to do 8 relaxation fluff and buff massages in a row, I can't say I'd be too jazzed about that, to be
yeah,
honest.
but I literally had patients that I didn't enjoy, and sooner or later, we parted ways. It took me a while to recognize this concept of building the
Well,
practice
because
I
they probably
want.
they were developing feelings for you, Mark, and
That's what I'm
they
saying.
couldn't take it anymore.
No, I know, it happens so much, but,
Such an attractive doctor, my gosh, right?
that's, young. But that's what I'm saying. I wanted my practice to be the way I wanted it. Patients wanted to be have their doctor to be they wanted it. I never tried to give them something I didn't do. I've said this more than once. I was not a good kinesiologist. I didn't do well with that particular technique, so I never tried to fake it. If somebody really wanted that, that was not on my list. My list didn't have someone who preferred kinesiology as their technique. So if that's the way it was, I referred them to a good friend who was great at kinesiology. And the patient was happy with me because I was being honest. The patient was happy with their care because they got what they wanted. And the other guy would refer someone back to me in the future that wanted a technique that they didn't do. It's
I
all
think I
just
think it looking at an AK doctor, it's probably a good slice of what we're talking about because that's a very specific, right,
mhm, yeah,
approach to chiropractic, and you have patients that I think either love it or don't understand it, like,
right.
and maybe they don't understand it, but they still love it. But it's a very specific type of service being delivered, and I think that fits the mold of exactly what we're talking about, that they are concepting those type of patients just by the technique that they're applying.
Oh, yeah. The technique pretty much defines their practice. And we're saying that should be true with you too. There should be some clinical identity that you have that patients can identify with. But also, there should be this criteria you have in your soul that says, these are the kind of people I will resonate with, which means I can help them the most. And there's what did I say? There's a seat for every ass. Well,
Wow, but a bum.
um, you know, and that's the truth. There's somebody for everybody. It just
All right.
doesn't have to be you.
So here's an interesting thought. Through your years of practice, when do you think you developed your clinical identity? Was it right out of school? To me, it doesn't, especially in today's world, it doesn't seem like that
Yeah.
would happen.
I honestly, I think I had the rough framework of who I was right away. I always wanted to be a competent clinician as far as
You keep working at it, buddy.
I keep working at it. Mhm. Yeah, I did. I wanted to be competent in not just my clinical skills, which I felt I was a very good adjuster. Actually, I was a great adjuster.
Of course you
Okay.
did.
Yeah. But I wanted to be confident in my clinical skills, but also my clinical knowledge. And so, yeah, I only went in that direction. And guess what kind of patients I got? Take a
Well,
wild guess what kind of
yeah.
patients I had in my practice. People who liked that.
But sometimes the universe will challenge you, right? And maybe give you patients who aren't like that. And maybe that's because the universe wants you to work on that skill of maybe molding them or being able to reject them if it's not,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. We talked about this with personality types when you had that driver type of personality type, which clashes with a lot of how I ran my practice.
What are you trying to say, buddy? I was kidding.
Ah, you're not a driver. But the challenge was to see if we can turn them over because if you converted a driver patient into accepting and liking the way you were, they were the best patients. So sometimes, yeah, outward appearances are, "No, this is not it. This is not for me. This person's not for me." I'm not saying you reject everybody right off the bat. You give everybody a chance to become one of your patients the way you like it. Bill Murray said, "Whatever you do, give it 100%, unless you're donating blood."
Good point.
And that's the same thing. Give them 100% upfront and give them the chance to give it your excellent patient.
So, what sage advice, as a seasoned doctor, would you give these freshman chiropractors that just coming out of school? They're only like 1 or a couple years in practice, and they haven't really found their clinical identity yet, per se.
Right. They might have to start with some very broad strokes. I think we mentioned it early. So the patient comes in and the broad strokes. I want them to have a spinal related problem that they will come in for and keep their appointments, pay whatever their share is, and refer others. And that's kind of like the old Parker thing, right?
Yeah.
Stay, pay, and refer others. So you start out with the broad, and then as time goes on, you will filter it down more and more. All of a sudden, you go, "Oh, geez, I really don't like treating people who are very, very, very degenerated because I feel like I want to be able to do more for them than just maintain a symptom." Though there are many people that love that, or, "Geez, I really like kids," or "Geez, I really don't like having kids." I mean, whatever it is, time will reveal itself to you, but the basics kinda stand out in the beginning. I
Mhm.
want 'em to come in, stay, get well, pay, and refer others.
Do you think there's some benefit to once you, as a doctor, the clinician, you have, let's say, done this, you've put it in writing. I think putting it in the physical space is important. But let's say you outline, your wish list of what an excellent patient is. Should they share that with their CAs at the front desk? Because I
Oh,
imagine
it was
they might
I
have
trained
different
on it.
opinions, right?
Well, that it was always it's in a obviously, it is a discussion with your staff, okay? And they should understand what your expectations are. Patients, like I said, I handed this out to patients on their re-exam. They got how to be an excellent patient, how to be a good patient. They don't have to be excellent. They can just be good. Okay. How to be an excellent patient. Um, and that was the party line. That was what we said to our patient. That was our platform. In the world of politics, you say, "What's your platform?" This is my platform. So if a CA didn't agree with it, I can pretty much guarantee you one way or another that CA was not gonna be working for me. Because
Yes,
truly,
right.
in my practice, it's my practice. I didn't work for anybody except my patients. And for me to do the best I could with my patients meant I had to be happy and healthy myself. So if you're a patient that doesn't make me happy, then I'm not going to make you healthy. Find someone else. You have to be able to be discerning, and you have to be able to let them walk away. I get this all the time in report of findings. You make your recommendations. I don't care what they are. You say, "I wanna see you twice a week for 6 weeks," whatever, right? And then they start with the "let's make a deal."
Yeah,
And they start, "Well, I can't come in twice a week. That's too expensive," or whatever. "How about if I come in once a week and try it?" Getting back to your young doctor, their answer is going to be "sure."
right.
Right? My answer was, "No." I didn't recommend twice a week because I just needed a car payment. I recommended twice a week becau well, maybe I d no, I
Right.
recommended twice a week because you needed it. So, if I compromised on that, all that did was tell them I didn't really have any conviction to my twice a week recommendation. Where a young doctor might say, "All right, let's give it a try. Let's see." Patient comes in because they're not following your recommendations. They don't get well or they don't get as well as they're supposed to. They leave you. They don't maybe even have a balance. They don't even pay that. They don't refer other people and they're just bad mouthing you. So, what's the ultimate goal in you compromising who and what you are and what you believe as a clinician? Nothing. 0. There's no plus. No plus to it at all.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there about not compromising your values, not compromising who you are as a clinician, and not compromising on the clinical judgments you make. And certainly, we all understand that patients have challenges of their own, whether it's transportation or financial, personal, whatever. But they're in your office, right? So it's not up to you to overcome all their challenges. It's just to present the information, and they're either going to say yes or they're going to say no, or maybe they'll say yes and not follow through, and then you'll have to deal with the discharge aspect of it. So
Right. I'd rather they walk out there and say he never treated me because I wouldn't accept his recommendation rather than I tried it. It didn't work. I'm done with that. And too many people compromise on so many different levels. And one of them that you should never compromise on is what makes you happy. Gotta be in this for the long run. there's no exit strategy in chiropractic
Mhm.
other than work to the day you stop working, and hopefully
That
that will be
used to be the
enough.
goal of chiropractors, wasn't it? To drop dead on your last patient,
Exactly.
basically, wasn't it?
Exactly.
I mean, there
Bada
have been
boom,
chiropractors that have done
at a
that.
later age, of course.
Well, yeah, I mean, after a long, fruitful, and wonderful career,
Right.
the first patient you ever adjusted was your last patient and, they say
Yeah.
goodbye to you. But
Exactly,
that's not
exactly,
quite
and that's what
what
I'm
today is
saying is,
like.
it's a strong way of kinda saying, you don't have to be for everybody. You should have a criteria of what makes you happy, and if you're happy, you're making your patients healthier, and if they're healthier and you're happy and they're happy, the business builds. But don't keep diverting your success by taking anything and everything, even when you know you don't want to.
But I have to tell you that in the billing company, when, the first few years, any business you build, it's just hard, right? You don't pay yourself, you're just putting everything into your company. And I remember the few clients from the billing side that didn't stay. And I knew when I took them on I shouldn't have, but I
Mhm.
did. Sometimes they were trying to convince me, sometimes I convinced myself. I could just tell it wasn't a good fit, but, again, that financial, burden made me compromise my gut feeling, and it's hard, but I can tell you that my gut wasn't wrong any of those times. There was only a
And,
few.
they didn't pay you, so how much money did you actually
Yeah.
make with them? It cost you money because you put the time in and never got paid. So
Well, some
you'll
of them
get
they
better at
paid,
this too.
it's just not it just didn't work out in the end. The expectations
Right.
weren't there, and I could just tell, a lot of times it's personality. So, but you learn those lessons, right? You get kicked in the stomach, as I say in business, and then you learn your lesson, and then you don't compromise down the road, and saying no sometimes makes them want you more, and then you gotta
Like,
really stand on your principles.
well, we talk about this a lot, this concept of exchange, and that means that they get equal to what you give, and you get equal to what they give, and that makes the best doctor-patient relationship for sure. So, if you're out of exchange, then it forces the patient to justify things like not paying you or not showing and not being made to feel guilty or whatever, so they find fault with you.
Yeah, that's like the default
So
human
so
nature thing,
yeah,
right?
so
Yeah.
from a pure business perspective, this is what makes sense. Know what you want, know what they want, and decide if you're willing to give them what they want, and if it isn't, refer them to someone who will, and if it's something you're willing to give, then do it to the best of your ability. Easy as that, and
Yeah.
business will always be there.
And try not to fall in the trap of being because of stressors in your life, whether they're money or time, energy, that your decision of what is a great patient is really just a unilateral decision versus a complex, profound, really characteristics that you want to outline, as we said at the top. You want to outline that because then you really are write it down and you really are concepting those people to come in your door.
That's kinda it. We just talked for half an hour, and that was the whole thing right there.
If only we just said that in the beginning, we
Said
wouldn't have
that, we
wasted
could've been
everyone's
done to
time.
yeah, we're good, establish clear rules and expectations and don't be surprised when they happen.
Yeah, right?
Great
Well,
expectations.
all of our listeners are excellent listeners, so we appreciate you listening to us, and
That's it,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
You don't know this, but we've concepted you.
yeah,
Yeah, we're simpatico here, we got it.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
On that note, thank you again for joining us for another episode of All Things Chiropractic. I'm Paul Andrews.
I'm Dr. Mark Davini. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to All Things Chiropractic. We'd love to hear from you. Visit allthingschiropractic.com with comments, episode ideas, or questions. Or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram at All Things Chiropractic Podcast. Be sure to join Dr. Mark Davini and Paul Andrews next time for another episode of All Things Chiropractic.